if the Undead tries to do that and you have a shop there instead of just a wisp, then you'll find that you can actually hold off the ghoul and still pick up your hero. Of course, he may send more ghouls to actually kill the shop, but then you've screwed with his lumber resources a little bit, and like I said, shops are cheap, so it's not all that bad of an idea. You might want to try it. It worked out pretty well this game with Sonic picking up the items like he did. So you'll notice here that the key to doing this sort of harassment is just staying on the Death Knight and staying on the Undead at all times. Eventually, Sonic was able to get a Death Knight kill by dealing some damage and then going home and healing his Demon Hunter, dealing some more damage and then coming back. In a Mana Fountain situation, he has no way to heal himself, and so if you're able to heal up and then come back with boosted speed, especially when he doesn't have Unholy Aura and when he's trying to fast attack the gargoyles like a lot of Undeads do, then you'll be able to put a lot of pressure on this Death Knight and make it so he can't creep. So that was a very effective harassment by Sonic, and the other thing that he's doing by picking up this panda quickly is just being able to spam Breath of Fire. Again, Mana Fountain situation. You have the panda right at tier 2, and anytime you see a clump of undead units, there's no reason not to cast Breath of Fire, because you can always just run your panda back to the fountain and heal it up again. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that Protector that he made at the early game to protect himself now is useful for protecting his Lumber Wisps. So this is sort of another nice piece in this strategy, is that same Protector will continue to be useful late game. And you'll notice that he went straight to bears. Now, the reason for this is that if your undead opponent is teching straight to gargoyles, and you're not expanding right away, it becomes very difficult for you to outmass dryads to their gargoyles, because their units are only 2 food, they move very fast, they have the advantage of air, and your units die very quickly to each other. So, with Undead's ability to heal and all that stuff, it becomes a very difficult battle when you don't have a resource advantage. And so instead, you can use, with a quick tech to tier 3, like this fast tech makes that very easy. You can tech straight to Orb of Venom and just use your heroes to put pressure on the gargoyles with Orb of Venom and with Breath of Fire. And meanwhile, you can make bears, which don't really take hardly any damage from gargoyles, and are able to use Rejuvenation to help them stay alive even more, and in a Mana Fountain situation are very, very useful. And are very helpful for creeping the high damage output creeps on this map. And so you'll notice that Sonic again is absolutely staying on Boo. He's pretty much had a unit near Boo's base or near Boo's army this entire game. And he's bringing a couple bears with his Demon Hunter to, have that rejuvenation option available, and has a staff on his Demon Hunter in case Boo tries to focus down one of the bears. But in the meantime, he's using his panda and a couple more bears to do some creeping. So bears are very, very powerful at this stage in the game. Boo doesn't have a good way to kill them, so you can use them offensively, like he's doing with his Demon Hunter. You can use them defensively, like he's doing with his panda, to creep. Or you can use them for both. You only need a couple bears in either scenario, so if you have 4 bears, you can split up your army. And it's often a good idea, as I talked about before, to pressure the undead with your Demon Hunter as you're creeping with your panda. Panda levels are, in the end, very, very important. And Demon Hunter is a very good harassing hero. So you'll notice that as soon as Sonic saw the Sacrificial Pit in the undead's base, he picked up a dust. And this is something that you should get in the habit of doing. It's very good practice to pick up dust. Versus undeads who put up that Sacrificial Pit and just cast it when you think you have a shade on you. To make sure to eliminate the shades, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble by having shades on your army. And so you'll notice now that Sonic has a really strong army, and there's not a whole lot Boo can do to actually hurt Sonic's units, as you notice right there. Between Rejuvenation and Staff, Sonic can keep his bears alive very nicely, and meanwhile he can still have a nice damage output on the gargoyles, and his ground army does nice damage to the bears, to the Death Knight. At this stage in the game, it's often worthwhile to try to expand. Especially if you put good pressure on the undead, and you've kept his levels down pretty effectively. Especially if you have a level 3 panda, but even in this case, level 3 Demon Hunter, almost level 3 panda. You can do a lot of damage to his gargoyles, And this phase of the game, it makes a lot of sense to expand. Now, if he catches you expanding like this, you can see what Sonic's doing. He's not going to be able to save that expansion because gargoyles did enough damage to it while it was constructing. But he is going to be able to put a lot of pressure on those gargoyles, and do some damage to them. And meanwhile, he can use his bears, which aren't in the gargoyle fight, to creep. If you notice on the southern side of the map, he's creeping this gold mine with just his bears, as he's using the rest of his army to pressure the undead. And so this sort of army splitting with bears is very, very useful on a map like Gnollwood, where undead players will often are often playing very aggressively with gargoyles, and they will keep track of where they know you've crept, and they will expect where you've expanded, and check these likely expansion spots. But if you split your army and you have a couple bears off creeping while you're on the undead is distracted enough to not necessarily realize that you're creeping something. He's not going to be scouting all over the map like you can with wisps. He's going to be, trying to remember where you creep a large part of the time. And so a lot of times you can distract him and use that army splitting to creep an expansion and get an expansion up before he realizes that it's there. And if you look on the south side of the map, that's exactly what Sonic's doing. He's crept that. Boo doesn't know he's crept it, most likely. I'm guessing. Boo could theoretically know, but Boo doesn't seem to be checking it right now with his gargoyle, so he probably doesn't. And so that sneaky little expansion is going to pay off, and Boo won't notice it until he does, just some general expansion scouting. So this is the kind of thing that you have to keep in mind when you have bears, is that you don't need most of your army to fight off the undead army. You really just need your heroes and a couple of bears, and so you can use the rest of it to do some effective things, like creeping. So you'll notice that now Sonic is starting to mix in some Dryads into his army. It's useful just to have a little bit of slow to pressure that Death Knight and to pick off gargoyles. You don't really need all of that many bears at this stage of the game, just a few to split your army and do that kind of stuff. And you'll notice the Dryads were effective, like right there, in putting pressure on that Death Knight and forcing a town portal. So you'll notice in general that Sonic is playing a very aggressive game, and there's no reason not to do that against gargoyles, because the gargoyle strategy is built to put you on the defensive. They're harassing your wisps, they're keeping you contained, and you don't want to allow the undead to do that. You want to have, if you're going Demon Hunter, the whole point of Demon Hunter is to play offensively and to keep your Demon Hunter on them at all times.
Grove is being desecrated.
And so you can use your Demon Hunter with Rejuvenation, and mono-burning the Death Knight. The undead's not really going to have any way to deal a lot of damage to that Demon Hunter, so you can do some good harassment and play a very aggressive game that'll allow you the time to do things like expand. Now, if you notice on the south side of the map, Boo has done the smart thing and checked for that expansion. And so Sonic was not able to get this particular expansion up. But again, you'll notice that Sonic is always engaging Boo. He took that panda, switched the Staff of Teleportation onto the panda, and sent it down to the constructing expansion. Now the panda had an anti-magic potion, which by the way is always a good idea. If you have the money, you should have anti-magic potions on your heroes for situations like this when they definitely come in handy. And sent it down to the expansion, and with that level 3 panda, he was able to do a lot of damage to Boo's army, even while, again, he was creeping with the rest of his army in a place that Boo didn't realize. And so what you have to notice about this game is that you don't necessarily, the theme that I'm sort of harping on here is you don't